Hello and welcome to another episode of Siblings on the Spectrum. I'm Cameron,
And I'm Key.
and today we'll be having a look at the substance.
Da-da-da.
So, we're finally covering a contemporary movie. So, let me read you the synopsis here. I'll bring this up shortly. Quick read of the synopsis. So, the film follows Demi Moore's Elizabeth Sparkle, a celebrity reaching the end of her journey of fame and popularity, who wants nothing more than to regain everything that time has taken away from them. Enter the substance, a mysterious liquid that promises to solve all her problems. Instead, it just introduces a new one, Margaret Qualley's Stew. Okay, Key, would you like to tell everyone why are we covering this particular movie today?
Well, when I went to watch it, I was just fascinated with the concept of plastic surgery, and I thought it was going to be a film reminiscent of what we're seeing Madonna do, and I'm a big Madonna fan, so I was like, oh, it's going to be about the horrors of plastic surgery or problems of aging. And I wasn't prepared for what the film was really about. When I went in, it seemed like it was going that way, but it consistently shocked me, and I felt like it almost took me down paths of predictability and oh, she's gonna make it out or this is gonna turn out, and then they pivoted it, and then it went even. I just felt like I was on a roller coaster ride, and I kept going up, 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 and even when I thought, okay, now we're going down, they just kept going up. And by the end, I had a visceral reaction. Like I was laughing so loud, I was almost embarrassed for the because the people around me. I couldn't believe it, especially the final scene. I don't know how much we want to spoil it for people, but the final scene where everything kind of explodes. It was so incredible. Um, I left the movie theater feeling completely um emotionally drained in a way, but elated. And I haven't felt that way about a movie. I don't remember when, frankly, like maybe in the last 20 years. So it just got such a huge emotional reaction out of me, and so much laughter and horror, and it was very cathartic. And I was like, oh my God, Demi Moore, it's gonna resuscitate her career.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
interesting. Her career actually, the first thing I ever saw her in was 3D Parasite, a horror movie way back in like I think it was 1980. I'll have to look that up. But so she started her career in horror, and she was in another horror movie, sort of a biblical horror movie called oh, I just lost the name of it. The Seventh Seal or something like that. The Seventh Sign, I think it was called. So she's
yeah.
dabbled her toes in horror before, but this is a great big comeback for her. I think she's perfectly cast, first of all, in this role. Um, it's too bad. Usually horror doesn't get Academy Award nominations, and neither does satire, because I think this is a combination of horror and dark satire, and I
Yeah.
think her performance is so strong she could be nominated. She just has this look about her, even her eyes and her hair, the raven hair and her steely eyes. She has this steely determination look,
Yeah.
which really adds to the role. Plus the gravitas of having so many years in the spotlight as celebrity. And she's also been in movies that did actually focus just on her body. Uh,
Yeah.
and she was on the front cover. Was it Esquire?
Hmm.
Mostly naked when she was pregnant. So there's been a lot of focus throughout the last few decades on Demi Moore's body and her youth and so on and so forth. Well, for example, that movie Striptease. So in a way, she's the perfect actress to portray this role of a woman who's in her well, I guess in the movies, how old did they say she's in the movie? Because I think she's 60 now. But
Yeah. I think she was getting there. She was somehow in her 50s. I like
yeah, in her 50s. But
the Dennis Quaid character said that after 50, it's all over. Remember that scene?
Harvey, yeah,
Yeah.
Harvey, after
Harvey.
eating all his gobbling down all his shrimp. Um, she is perfect at portraying this woman who once was a Hollywood star, and lately she has sort of moved out of the limelight, but is very concerned with losing her youth and losing her youthful looks. So that's perfect casting, first of all. That's one of the reasons the movie was so enjoyable to me. Also, I thought it was I don't think I had the visceral response you did. But when I watched it, first of all, I admired the craft so much. It's a very cinematic movie, one of the most cinematic movies I've seen in a while. For example, I really like how they portrayed the passage of time.
Yeah.
They did it many different ways, very cinematic. And the color scheme, we can go into that a bit more. I really admired that. And the editing and the pace was just perfect. I also like how the premise is really absurd, how you just call a number and you're told to go to a really seedy part of LA to a door that hardly opens and crawl inside and find the substance, and you just inject it into yourself without a second thought. I guess
Yeah,
it's,
and no
yes,
medical training. It's
yeah.
highly medical what they're, and I'm like, what the hell's going on
And
here?
and her only possible contact is to call this, I guess it's like a 1-800 number, and she always gets the same guy that gives her this really abrupt advice on what she's doing wrong and hangs up on her. So, I mean, that's quite absurd. I like how it just rolls through all the plot holes, though. It just keeps going at this intense pace, and you don't question it. It's just happening. It's unfolding in front of you. So, yeah,
Yeah, I
admire.
felt that being led along, like, and there's a lot of like taking you down hallways, uh, and I just felt like I was like being forced, like, to see this gaze, like they took over my gaze for me,
Yeah,
which I thought was very clever because I do think it's challenging the masculine gaze in a way. So it's like there's almost a dominating of what I'm looking at, and I definitely felt like they're leading me,
yeah.
and I liked it. I was like, where this is fascinating. Where is this going to go? I wanted to mention with Demi Moore, she was on the cover of Vanity Fair.
Oh, Vanity Fair,
Yeah,
yes. I thought it
famously
was.
in a suit, naked in a suit, and you're right. She's done a lot. A lot has focused on her body. Like, I think she also played Hester Prynne in the uh, Hester Prynne in the adultery film, and now it's slipping my mind. Scarlet Letter. I think she was in the Scarlet Letter.
And Decent
So
Proposal was another.
yeah, and so she did, and then Ghost was the big one that kind of launched her into the stratosphere for me.
Yeah,
But she did G.I. Jane too, which was about her body, but in a different way. She completely masculinized for that film.
yeah,
So she has this ability to transform it. She does use her body as an acting tool. So it was perfect. This is all about your body getting completely out of control on you in so many ways.
she was very brave, very, very brave in the role, and she had a lot of twists and turns within the script. She had a lot of different characters. At once she's energetic, then she's empathetic, and then she's sort of that scary character with the cloak over her head, which is somewhat comical.
Yeah.
She has a lot to do in this film, like from an acting standpoint, and she succeeded marvelously. So it's an amazing performance. Do you feel it should be nominated, her performance?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if it will be either because it really uh kicks the shit out of Hollywood and
Yeah,
the system. It should be nominated if they have any kind of sense of humor or self-consciousness about themselves, it would be nominated because it's so perfect about just the industry it makes so much fun of the industry. I'd be very surprised if they would have the moral courage to do that. It's almost camp what the film is doing.
yeah. Like
There is campy elements, yeah.
I don't think the Academy Awards they don't deal with horror very well. It never gets nominated really. And they don't deal with satire well either. Uh,
No.
Her performance, I was trying to think of another performance that reminded me of that intensity, that reached that satirical edge and really went for it. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Citizen Ruth, starring Laura
No.
Dern. Oh, when I saw that movie, I thought Laura Dern should be nominated for Academy Award, but it's a satire about abortion and right,
Oh,
and so it would never be nominated. But Citizen Ruth is another dark satire, and the quality of Laura Dern's performance, and I remind me of the quality of Demi Moore's performance in this film. It just got that satirical edge that it's hard to do. It can be hard to pull off because
yeah.
you're being dramatic, you're being empathetic, you're being horrific, and you're being funny in a dark way. That's an awful lot to juggle for one actor in within a 2 hour long film. It's a lot. So Demi Moore does a lot. Yeah, I kind of hope she gets nominated, but we'll see, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so selfish. I'm like, I just want to see what she would wear to the Academy Awards. I hope that she would wear something so clever and challenging and interesting. Like, I actually think I listened to her autobiography not too long ago. She's a fascinating person.
Yeah,
Really, really intelligent actor, and she's had quite the life of trauma, especially growing up. Um, and I think it comes out in her work, the sensitivity and the depth that's there. And I absolutely think she's been overlooked because of her looks.
yeah.
And now that she's older and they think that I don't know if that was her. I must have been her lying naked on the floor in the bathroom. I was completely shocked when I saw her doing that because I was like, I can't believe the courage to do that.
No, she was. It was her. It was her.
Yeah. Yeah. That was so incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah. And the vulnerability, and when she wanted to go out on a date with that just dull normal guy, and she has like a meltdown in front of the mirror. I thought that was a stunning performance as well, because I've actually so in my previous, so I'm a trans man, so before I transitioned, I had a meltdown like that when I was getting ready, and I just like the makeup I just couldn't take the mask. I just couldn't measure up. I knew that it was a performance, and how she makes it seem like you can see that she's not only an actor, she's doing a gender performance, and she's no longer able to do that performance because of her age.
right.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Yeah.
That scene in front of the mirror reminded me of a scene from a David Lynch film. And while I was watching this film, I definitely detected some nods to other directors, but done in a very clever way.
Hmm.
For example, that scene in front of the mirror, which is rubbing the lipstick on her face, reminds
Yeah.
me of a scene from Wild at Heart, where our character rubs the lipstick entirely over her face, gets in a rage, and is totally covered in the lipstick. I think there is a little bit of a homage to Lynch in this movie, but not so much as Stanley Kubrick. I think Kubrick's shadow really reigns across this film. You mentioned the corridor, the time.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
gone down a corridor. I call that the Kubrick corridor.
Yeah.
It's really orange. And now I actually looked up the psychology of these colors. So orange is a youthful color, very youthful.
Oh,
It's very Los Angeles citrus fruit orange. So it's a very happy, youthful color. And I noticed as Demi Moore's character went along that corridor, you see all these pictures of Demi Moore throughout her career. And it's like she's actually passing through her own career, not just through the movie's time frame, but through her own career. And then Sonny
yeah.
reminds her it's her birthday. Oh, happy birthday. She says, thank you. But those shots down the long corridor remind me of corridors in The Shining. And
Absolutely.
there's even a scene in The Substance with a lot of blood spatter coming along the walls, and that reminded me of The Shining. And then
Yeah.
thinking all this is very Kubrick. It reminds me a bit of Kubrick. It's very detailed, tightly controlled color palette, tightly controlled set design. We have to really watch what you want. And then at the end of the movie, they played the theme from 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I thought, well, there's definitely a nod to Kubrick without question, which I thought was brilliant. And
Yeah.
a nod, of course, the body horror has got a lot of commentary. There's some really great practical effects in this. And did you catch there's a little, of course, it is a little bit like David Cronenberg's early work, like particularly Videodrome with the body,
Yeah.
also the fly. There was a little homage to the fly put in just after Demi Moore had that. Oh, you caught it?
Yeah. I
She's
did. Yeah.
talking to Dennis Quaid's character, what's his name, Harvey? And he's gobbling down all the shrimp. And when the meeting's over, she looks at the wine glass and there's a fly just floating around in the wine glass, slowly drowning. And that really reminded me, I thought, oh, that's a little clever homage to David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Well,
So,
I think the fly comes up again.
oh yeah,
I
when?
Yeah, I think that there was a fly again, like coming against the glass at one point too. So I noticed the fly, and I did notice, I thought immediately of The Shining as soon as you saw the carpets, those
Yeah,
crazy carpets. And then of course that famous scene in The Shining where the elevator doors open up and there's a huge bath.
yeah,
It's just very, very much. And then of course the other film that I thought about was Carrie, because of the whole like sort of almost prom scene feeling. If you've seen Sissy Spacek in the
yeah,
Carrie,
yeah,
and just at the end. So I guess it was the New Year's Eve show, but it looked like the prom scene to me, but it was even worse. So, and it was a reverse. How
Hmm.
much do we want to do a spoiler here? I guess if you haven't seen the movie, we're going to ruin it for you.
We'll have to have a spoiler warning, yes. Because
Yeah,
the final
I
scene, the transformation scene, the body horror, I'm a fan of body horror. It reminded me a fair bit of not just The Fly, but also it reminded me a bit of Altered States, the way the creature looked. But
yeah.
also a movie called Society, which is a very dark satire horror as well. Brian Usna's Society. So the body horror brought back some of the practical effects. Also, The Thing, of course, John Carpenter's The Thing. So there is some fantastic body horror in here, practical effects, which I think should be nominated as well, really.
Oh
Uh,
my God, yes.
yeah, nomination for that. So come Academy Award time, it'd be interesting to see what this film gets. Yeah, definitely. You had a point there earlier you were going to go on with?
Yeah, well, just I was talking about the transformation scene, and in Carrie, the blood is poured on the Sissy Spacek character, but in the substance, it actually becomes like a powerful force pouring out of the character. So it's kind of like a reversing. Um, the power goes to the female character, and there was a lot about periods and menstruation in Carrie. Like there was a whole thing where they got into a fight in the locker room and they were throwing tampons at her and things. So that was all tied up, like that disgust in the female body. Carrie was very much about that, and Carrie's mother was a really crazy religious fundamentalist figure who was like, "Your dirty pillows in your body, it's disgusting." And Carrie was just a normal, well, she had paranormal, but she was a normal person going through puberty. And I thought, here we have well, what do we say the name of the monster was? Monstro Elizasu is basically having a perimenopausal meltdown because her body isn't working anymore, and just the blood is spewing out of her. And I thought it was very interesting when Sue was having the problems like transforming back, and she had a guy in the apartment, and he was like, "What's going on?" And he was banging on the door. And he was like, "Are you having your period?" And there was blood on the floor. And then she yelled and he ran out in such fear and horror, this huge pumped up guy. And I
Yeah.
thought that showed like the terror that, a lot of men and society in general, misogynist culture has about women's bodies and what's oozing out of them.
Right. Well, I think the scene where the blood is sprayed over the audience, since it went on a lot of execs, like there's studio heads there, like Harvey and the other studio execs. I kind of thought
Mm,
it's very symbolic of the idea of the blood is on their hands now. Like this
yeah.
now been torn apart by your system is exploding before your very eyes and totally melting down, but the blood is literally on their hands, like they're covered in it. So they're very guilty. So that's kind of what I read out of that.
Yeah, I see. It's interesting. I thought it was a very empowering because of the menstrual taboo all throughout history, and I'm interested in theology, and like all major religions had taboos around that, and just the horror that in heterosexual male cisgender culture, like there's an objectification of the female body, but any of the sloppiness or pregnancy or any like menstrual things happening is not referred to or talked about. Like it's kind of like a sanitized version of being female, and they don't want like any of that. And what people are going through in menopause is it's a bit messy. And
Yeah,
just like the humanity of it. So like I felt that she was like actually using her body to like kill them and getting revenge. Like the thing that you're not getting what you want, you're actually getting the real like part of the reality of being human sprayed in your face. And I noticed that in the beginning, when the transformation happened and the audience was clearly seeing it, but the most of the people who started screaming were women. They were also screaming. I noticed that.
oh, really?
They showed a lot of shots of very proper women. There was a little girl there going like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy to be just like this woman." And then they see like the reality and they're like, "No, oh, you know what I mean?" And I noticed that because like it was a man who yelled, "Kill the monster," but it was the women who first started all screaming and there were several shots on women. before the men took over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so. I think that even it's how we all accept those standards, but the reality of it is, what are we going to do with this sloppy body, which is out of control? Yeah.
So another
Um,
thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, we were talking about references. Like you're really into horror and you're excellent and you know so much about that. I'm more into the popular culture movies. So I thought a lot about JB Lee Curtis, who's actually done a lot of horror.
Yeah.
But I thought about the movie Perfect, where she was an aerobics instructor.
With John
Um,
Travolta. Yes.
yeah, and there's a whole thing about how she completely transformed her body um, to be, and she had the perfect body, and people were asking her, "What's it like to have the perfect body?" So I was like, that character Elizabeth reminded me very much of Jamie Lee Curtis at that moment in her career in the 80s, and it was strange. Did you notice it was like it looked like the 80s in when
Yeah.
in
The scene where she was doing the exercise show with the really bright color palette was very 80s. Yeah.
yeah, and I did notice too, like with Sue, I don't know if you noticed this, but when it was more on Sue, the cars were up to date and really cool. And but there was also with Elizabeth a lot of retro cars around when she was around. I don't know if you noticed that. So there's a ton of retro cars. I was like, it was clearly done on purpose.
Okay, so you were mentioning that when we see it's Elizabeth, right? Demi Moore's character.
Yes.
When she's outside, you see quite a few retro cars.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed quite often when she's outside, she wears that really ostentatious yellow coat.
Yes, I noticed that too.
Yellow is a prominent color in this movie as well. We have blue is as well,
Hmm.
yellow and orange, very prominent. In fact, I looked up the psychological meaning of the color yellow. I was so curious. And interestingly, it's not just energy, but too much energy to the point of burnout, but it also has duplicity inherent
Hmm.
in it. It can also be like they call someone yellow if they're a coward, so it can be both good or bad. And I thought that's interesting because there's literal duplicity in this movie because you have two people sharing the same body.
Yes.
But it's also interesting. Do you remember the first time we saw the color yellow in this movie?
Yes, the eggs.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
her color matches the egg as well, the yolk that's separating into two at the beginning of the movie. Plus, the background was blue. And
Yeah.
in the background, there is sadness, there is blue. And Elizabeth often does wear blue. She's wearing a blue dress when she confronts Harvey in the restaurant and
Yeah.
why she's being let go. And he says it's because you're of your age, so on and so forth. And it might not be an accident that Harvey's nervous. He's gobbling all those shrimp, that infamous scene. Well,
Yeah.
I think those shrimp are orange as well. It's almost like he's gobbling up orange is the color of vitality and youth and energy and positivity and happiness. It's like
Yeah.
he's gobbling it up. And then at the very end of the movie, when there's the bloodbath scene, Harvey's wearing an orange suit then. Did you notice that? It's
No, I noticed that he was wearing flamboyant suits, but I didn't notice the color.
very orange suit, very obvious. So I think he's eaten up her happiness, and now he's wearing it as his own badge of he's a successful executive who's can make and break them. He gobbles people up like as quickly as he gobbles up his shrimp. So the
Yeah,
movie,
I did notice the yellow too. I was going to mention it to you, and the Zamboni that cleans up Elizabeth at the very end is yellow as well.
yeah,
Um, that's her color. And I noticed that Sue had this very aggressive metallic pink in her workout scene.
yes, yeah.
Um, and I thought I thought it was a very aggressive femininity. And I actually counted, I noticed visibly, you mentioned the cinematography in this movie. I noticed the first time I saw the movie, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen so many crotch shots in any movie ever. And it's very aggressive and uncomfortable.
And
Um,
bottom shots of the buttocks.
yeah, so but I counted just crotch shots. The next time I actually just put a little tick like a creep in the movie theater. And there was 32.
Yeah.
So it was very, very those scenes, there wasn't a lot of those, they were interspersed and there was a lot of pink and crotch shots. And I thought there was actually a call out to Barbie in the final scene when all the executives come and they're like, smile. And there's a scene in Barbie where all the executives run together in a clump. I hate Barbie as a movie, like, but we won't go into that. But I saw references to Barbie, and I saw other references to movies. I know that we talked a little bit about that. But can I mention some other movies I
Sure, go ahead.
one was, you mentioned David Lynch, like obviously The Elephant Man came right to mind when the Monstro Elizasu appeared, and the whole like I'm still me inside, and that's like
Yeah,
the message of The Elephant Man. It was like 1980, I think the Elephant Man came out. Um, and then obviously like them being, I thought it was fascinating that the characters were able to do intense medical procedures without any training. And Sue was able to do massive construction projects in the apartment with no training. And I
yeah,
thought it's interesting, like all the things that skills that people can acquire just to be beautiful, and they don't think about it, how much work it is, you know? So I thought of Pulp Fiction with like the jabbing of the, they just jabbed adrenaline into that person's heart when they OD'd.
right.
Um, and then I actually thought that Harvey, that performance reminded me of Dennis Quaid in Great Balls of Fire, like the crazy pedophile thing with Jerry Lee Lewis. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this is like,
He's very Lynchian as well. That character of Harvey is Lynch has done a lot of male characters, particularly in movies about Hollywood.
yeah,
Characters like that go over the top, like Dennis Hopper's character, Robert Loggia in Lost Highway. It's a Lynch, William Defoe and Wild at Heart. Lynch has a habit of taking a male character and really pumping them up to be ultra masculine and yeah, very surreal. He just pumps up the surrealism. It did remind me of a Lynchian character, yeah.
yeah, well, and I also the I didn't notice this, but I was actually at a Halloween party after seeing The Substance, and there was someone walking around in a cocktail dress, and they were bald and they had like one string of hair and their face was all mangled, and I was like, oh my God, are you Demi Moore in The Substance? And they actually got really mad at me. It was at like a queer party, and he was in drag, and he was like, no, I'm Gollum, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. People get mad when you don't. And I was, but so, and I realized after the fact, yeah, there's like a Gollum like look in that film, especially when Elizabeth's like all the old lady and she's like running out in the street, like trying to get her precious, which is to get her youth back.
Yeah.
Um, and just the one hair, I mentioned this to you. It reminded me of that viral video of the girl who was curling her hair and then it burnt off, and she looked at it. And there's a moment in the movie where um, the monster Lizasu actually looks at the screen, like breaks the fourth wall. And I was like, oh my God, that is so hilarious. That was the moment. So I saw it with an audience. I know
Yeah.
we weren't able to.
No,
Um, because you live so far up north. So I was able to see it at theater, and there was complete silence in the theater. I think people didn't know how to handle this movie. I saw it when it first came out as well, and
right.
I was shocked. But when the curling iron scene came out, I couldn't help it. I started laughing uncontrollably. I was the only person in the theater laughing. And then other people started realizing maybe this is supposed to be funny. And that was sort of the turn of the movie into this is getting campy and outrageous. And by the end, like there was a huge audience reaction of people screaming and laughing. And I wrote down, someone said at the very end, I heard her say, that was the movie of all time.
Mhm.
I was like, that's perfect. Anyway, so those were the other influences that I saw. But yeah, I did notice the yellow. I was like, I want to get a yellow coat now. Because who wears yellow like that? I
Yeah,
mean, you
only
know,
movie. We have to credit Coralie Farga. I think that's the way it's pronounced in French.
Gogalifagia.
Now, she not only pays homage to different directors, at least I believe, it's pretty obvious, especially the Kubrick side of things, but she makes sly references to her first film, which I saw called Revenge, which is a good movie. I recommend it. And now in
mhm.
that movie, she also plays with primary colors. And there's a male character in that movie who's a horrible person. who she shows in close up in slow motion eating a chocolate marshmallow treat, going kind of like Harvey eating the shrimp. So she seems to have a thing for men eating in a disgusting way close up, consuming things like that as they oogle a woman before them. But also her protagonist in Revenge, this young woman who's goes, I won't give away too much of the plot, but she goes through hell. And then, of course, as the movie title insinuates, she seeks revenge. She wears this single earring in the shape of a star. Just like is it Sue wears? Yeah, Sue wears.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
She wears, and I think the sole reason she's wearing that little is a homage to Coralie Forgot's first movie, Revenge. I think
Mm.
that's a little tip to that movie.
Well, I think we might be watching, and this is what I dearly hope, like the birth of an amazing director who's going to have a very long career and a whole
Yeah,
book. And I hope she will do like a Hitchcockian thing where something continuously refers to her previous work, or, like how Hitchcock showed up in every one of his movies.
right.
I think Tarantino does it too. Doesn't he show up in a lot of
Quite a
his movies?
few.
Yeah. But so like having a little thread of because this is her body of work. I hope she will end up having an amazing oeuvre. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned eating. I noticed this film is a there's a lot of eating. There's a lot of like disordered eating, and especially Elizabeth, when things aren't going well, she becomes like a French cook, which the Harvey character gave her this cookbook, and she's almost like revenge eating. And I thought this is also like eating disorders and the whole like vomiting on the audience and the things you have to do, and you just can't be eating like that if you want to look like how Sue looked.
Right.
um I thought that was interesting, and the whole body hatred, how you can disassociate from yourself, and you have like your work image where you look amazing, and then the person that no one sees at home, which is a total mess. So I thought that it was really sad because she just couldn't love herself. I mean, Sue and Elizabeth were supposed to be one, but it was almost impossible for them to be one because Sue was so amazing and Elizabeth just deteriorated. And this seemed to be a theme, like anyone, like there was a man in the cafe who also was doing this, and he looked terrible compared to his body double. And it's like very strange. Like you either had to have one that was really good looking and one that was awful and dying. Like they couldn't coexist together. And I thought that inner battle with yourself when you're dissociated, or how you hate your own self.
Well, I think this is a modern retelling of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
If you look at that story, Robert Louis Stevenson's classic story, um, it's definitely the same. There's a serum that turns him into another person who's more impulsive and violent, and it takes a huge toll on the person taking the serum. He becomes two different people. So I think I don't know if the director Corley Forget, if she's mentioned that, um, but I can't help but think that that would be a text that she's aware of and may have
Yeah.
influenced this movie, because I see it as a very modern retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, well, I think that's a cultural archetype. Like I think we know a little bit about. It's like something we all know, or like the Janus figure, like the two-faced god. Like
Yeah.
I think that that's a long cultural memory that we all have. Like I thought the menstruation taboo and the horrible women's horrible messy bodies was one we all seem to have throughout history, and then the two-face and who you are in public and who you are really, and the whole masking. About the masking, did you see any connection with autistic masking or neurodivergent masking in this film?
Well, it's an interesting question. I don't think that emotionally this movie touched me as deeply as it did you, but there is something there in that, not so much anymore, but when I was younger, I was maybe too caught up in my own appearance. I was always having to check the way I look. I think that's because I didn't understand a lot of social cues or how to socialize. So I thought you socialize to get people to like you by looking good or trying to look your best. And that's
Yeah.
how you enter a conversation, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I used to spend too much time just making sure everything looked great before going anywhere. I'd always have to get dressed up or look in the mirror, or, so on and so forth. So even though I don't have much of an ego, I was doing that. Once again, I think it was part of my trying to communicate with people and make connections with people just through my appearance, which doesn't work really, but I was naive at the time. So, and also I seem to have a lot of dreams in my own writing, this idea of a doppelganger that shows up that could potentially take over my life.
Yeah.
So I think there's something there. Maybe other autistic people can comment as well, whether there's something there in their lives as well. This thought of like sometimes actually, I think, what was Cameron like before diagnosis? What did I used to be like before I knew I was autistic? When I was
Yeah.
struggling because I didn't know I was autistic compared to now, I often catch myself thinking as if I was a totally different person before diagnosis, as if I wasn't the same person. And now
Mm.
so there's some connections there, some. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
I felt the huge connection because throughout there's dysmorphia, which is a discomfort with your body, and there is dysphoria as well because everything Demi Moore is doing is gender affirming. She's trying to be what society wants, the perfect female. So she's if she was a trans woman, we would see it much more clearly. But a lot of women in society have gender dysphoria, but we call it dysmorphia, and they're trying very hard to look a certain way. And I have memories. So I'm fascinated that you shared that about you had a fixation on your looks. I also had that fixation on my looks because I thought we have to. This is the way you will get acceptance,
Yeah.
and I felt like there was something I didn't fit in, and I knew that. And I would look at magazines and I would look at Demi Moore as a person to look like. Like in my previous life, people would say, "Oh, you look like her. You need to," but I'd never had the body. But I can't do the work. But I tried very hard to look like my Madonna or Princess Diana or Demi Moore was one of them because I saw them and I'm like, well, I should reasonably look like this.
Yeah.
And I didn't have all the work she had to do to look that way. It's pretty clear. It's fake, right? So I really resonated with like just in the horror of having a body that's not doing what you want it to, and you're trapped in a weird body, like especially at the end. And it's like, I'm still me in here. That's a very trans
Mhm.
idea. Like it's me in here, no matter how I look, it's still me. And ultimately the character was looking for love and affirmation.
Right.
Um, yeah, the very last scene, she gets it. Like all it might be her fantasy if she's like splattered on the ground, but do you remember that scene where it all turns nice and she's happy and everyone loves her? And when she first appears as Monster Elizasu, she has a fantasy that they're like loving her, and then she realizes that she's alone and she looks hideous.
Yeah.
Like what did you think about like the final sort of message where she probably was even hallucinating, like she was splattered on her own star? When that happened, I actually started applauding. I thought it was an amazing scene. What did you think of that?
Well, I thought it was interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, the color of the splatter is orange.
Yeah.
And it got wiped away by the color yellow, the duplicity, that duplicit color. So once again, she was like, it was like she was just eaten up by the system and finally just brushed away, carried away by it. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. And
gave
at the
up,
beginning,
she
yeah, at
gave
the
up the system, the substance, um, which we know it's very Kafkaesque. We never found out who made it. It's just a voice on the other end of the line. But it
mhm,
could be just maybe it's just society.
yeah.
Maybe society made it. It kind of looks like the juice from Reanimator. Remind me of that. It's glowing green. Maybe that's a tip to the movie Reanimator. But she just nonchalantly accepts that she needs to take it.
Yeah.
Almost as if it's made by culture, by society, because there's no one person we see making the substance, or it's nicely explained. It's very similar. I mean, it's very filmic, very cinematic how they explain how how it works, but they don't go into who's in the background, and I'm glad they did that. It's almost as if society created it. Society made the liquid, and she's taken it, and now the executives are getting what they want, but in the end, they have blood on their hands because they
Mhm.
destroyed a beautiful human being. And then that human being once had a star in Hollywood, had been there for quite a long time. We saw the passage of time and how time took its toll on her star. And pretty soon she stained her own star, but it just
Yeah.
wiped away by society and forgotten about at the end. So the yellow street cleaner, I think, is symbolic of the substance. At the end, it will destroy you and then wipe you away. You'll be
Oh.
uh,
See, we had different takes on it, but I did like in the beginning, someone spilt a pizza. It was a man who spilt a pizza on her star and wiped it up, and it looked
yeah,
remarkably like what Demi Moore ended up looking like, which was just
yeah.
like used food. So I think that
Like
your
the shrimp too. Or
yeah, your
yeah,
interpretation of being wiped away and just eaten up and garbage is probably right on. I felt it was a victory, just that she like destroyed that theater. That was to me, I
yeah,
thought it was very
maybe.
victorious. It's interesting. So she kind of won, but then she didn't win, you know?
Well, she did make it back to her star, didn't she? She made it back to
Yeah.
what made her great. So,
She'll
I mean,
never be
that
forgotten.
final scene was quite emotional for me. I mean, it caught me. I was hoping and praying she would make it to her star without giving away too much of the ending. But
Yeah, and her name is Elizabeth Sparkle, right? Like
yeah,
yeah, so and the whole and there was a sparkle theme with the glow ball, which was
and
gold.
the earring as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
star earring. Always it was always there, the star.
Yeah. So she actually was a star regardless of all the crap she was doing. Like it's kind of it's sad and I think um yeah, in the end, oh, you mentioned if she took the substance, she just took it. But I think there was a whole thing where she threw it away first. She threw away the contact number.
Right.
I'm trying to remember what was the impetus to get it out of the garbage? Was it being
Oh, I think when didn't she see the ad? They're looking for her replacement.
yes. Oh my God, yes, that was it.
Yeah, she saw
And
it
then
in
she's like,
it's all done very clever. It's all very
yeah,
cinematic, the way nothing's explained for the audience. I really like this movie for that. And like I said, it's so well done. The satirical and absurd elements are so well done. And the movie is so confident and assured in its
yeah,
execution that you forget about the plot holes.
yeah, yeah. Oh
Forget
yeah.
about it, and you just go on this wild ride. It's not too many directors can do that, can juggle all those things. Like
No,
Kubrick, Lynch can do it, Kubrick can do it, Cronenberg can. There's directors that have done it in the past, but this director, yeah, Cora Lee, she's great.
yeah, well, I think she's gonna become like one of these legends. We'll look back in 20 years and we'll be like, remember when we first were talking about the
yeah,
movie The Substance, which was her second movie, but it was the movie that kind of blew her open.
yeah,
And I think when you were talking, I was thinking you have to trust the audience. Like directors who are doing this, and they're not explaining everything and they're making you think and making you do the work and actually letting you interpret it because we have different interpretations here of similar but different, like
yeah,
different takes. That is true art, which is leaving that space for the audience to negotiate the meaning of the movie. And this is definitely one of those movies. Like you could get so much out of it. You could just get entertained too and not I think it was almost impossible to not think when you see this movie though. They
yeah,
force you to think, which is
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I don't know that was it for me. Like you mentioned Jekyll and Hyde. I have you it's your turn to pick the movie and I suspect there's going to be Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, there's a movie called Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which is a weird sort of gender bending twist on the story from the early 70s.
You know I hate gender bending, Cameron.
Anyway, it caught my attention because you mentioned this movie, and that movie caught my attention, or maybe performance. I've mentioned that before. We'll see. We'll have to decide our next movie. And maybe once again, viewers can suggest something for us to have a deep dive on. But in closing, what would you rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I think I would give it a 9. There was just it got a little slow in the middle, just a little, but I think that was almost the pause at the top before they dropped me into the hell of the final whole explosion. But I don't know, almost like maybe a 10. I think everyone should go see it. And we didn't mention it, but it's almost sometimes I thought they were going to make it okay, or they were going to make it a dream, or they were going to make Elizabeth recover. And they made me think they were going to be stereotypical, and then they just pivoted and went a different direction. Did you have that feeling sometimes, like, uh-oh, maybe they're going to go this predictable way?
No, they always call me off guard. The only predictable character I saw, which was only a minor annoyance, was the guy living next door to her in the apartment building. I
Yeah.
thought that character was a bit cliched, right?
Yeah.
But that's part of a satire as well. Maybe that's the point. He is just very cliched. He's a satire of what who thinks he's a contemporary woman's man.
Hmm.
But other than that, no, it caught me off guard, definitely. And I was really impressed with how I was caught up in it, following this character through all these misadventures without questioning any of it. And it just really brought me in. Like I watched it twice as well.
Yeah. I would
Held,
watch it again. Yeah.
yeah, it held up both times. So I think I would give it like maybe like an 8.5 out of 10. Right
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, probably around in there because I watched it twice. I could watch it again. Yes,
Yeah.
it moves quickly. It's a rare movie that makes you think, but also moves quickly.
Yeah.
And there's enough in there to stimulate you as well. If you're looking for horror and special effects, it's in there as well. So there's quite a lot to chew on in this movie, so to speak. So I hopefully the Academy will recognize it for its special effects, its performance of Demi Moore, and I would say the director as well, when you say
Yeah.
so. Uh,
Oh my God, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I think we have a star is born, really.
yeah.
I want to see everything she does. Even I think if she even makes a horrible movie, it would be fascinating. I think I don't know anything about this person. I didn't research or anything. I think I just went to see the movie and I didn't know what it was about. I just so unexpected. So and I think it's rare now. They just don't give you movies where you have to think. Everything is like we've already heard this story. Like they're giving us a lot of pablum nowadays and Marvel comic movies and all this stuff or whatever.
Sequels, too many sequels.
Yes, good God. So I wish there was more movies out here like this. This is why I get like I would say a 9.5 or 10, just because I haven't felt this way in a long time about a movie. I was like so excited. And the
Yeah.
audience, like the second time I watched it, people got it and they were laughing. The first time there was just shocked silence until the hair curling scene, and I started losing my shit and I was embarrassed. I was like this one guy in the theater, but it kind of let other people laugh too. And I think people were laughing because I was losing my shit laughing so hard, and then it started just the unraveling.
I wish I could have seen it with an audience. Yeah, I had to wait to purchase it,
Yeah,
stream it, but yeah, I wish I could see it with an audience. That would have been great, I think. But
yeah.
you're lucky.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a really great little tiny alternative cinema that I go to here in where I live. So,
Hmm.
okay. So the next one, I think we should do is it Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde? I think it'd be good to pick a movie maybe people don't. I've never heard of it, so I don't know how obscure it is, but like, let's get it
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Or Performance is another movie I threw around, which is interesting as well. Also, gender, not only genre bending, but gender bending as well.
Performance. Okay.
Yeah, either one of those, just to
All
give.
right. Well, it's your turn, Cameron. So
Yeah.
maybe I don't know if anybody wants to vote in the comments below. What should we do? Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde or Performance?
Or something else. We'll see what else comes up, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a contemporary movie, another one will come up that'll really shock us and we'll really want to review it too. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I think Nosferatu is going to be,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Oh my
just I
God.
have a feeling the vibes I'm getting and what I've seen, the footage from it and the talk, I think Nosferatu is going to be definitely worthy of review. So we'll see.
I will never forget when I saw the original Nosferatu, and I think it was shown to me by the librarian in Godrich Library in this little small town as a kid, and I was at Halloween. Who shows kids that? It was so horrifying. I mean,
Original 1920s one?
yes, it's so
Oh,
terrifying because it's like the opposite of the sexy vampire, you
yeah.
know? Amazing. I'll never forget. It's almost like Phantom of the Opera, when you see the face, that's the shocking moment in the original Phantom of the Opera, like the old black and white.
Mm,
Actually, the Phantom of the Opera, does it relate to we don't want to get off on another tangent here, but
mm.
that's another thing about double personas, right? Because the Phantom of the Opera actually is living through the main Christine, the main singer. But so that
Whereas the
could be,
mask literally is masked. Yeah.
yeah, that was, I
Masked.
guess that just came up spontaneously now. So that's another um connection. Like there's so many movies about who, the doubleness of life or the duality, like who you are at home or who you are in public.
And David Lynch he's taken that on Mulholland Falls, a lot of his movies. Lost Highway. It's in a lot of his movies, this double identity sort of doppelganger sort of thing. Comes up in a lot of his work as well.
Yeah, well, maybe some people could suggest their favorite double cross movie. Haha, just kidding. Or like multiple identity issue movie with doppelgangers or something. I guess we have to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good talking to you.
Yeah, good one. Okay. So
Okay.
everyone, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another episode. Bye for now.
Bye.